14-year-old lures friend to a gruesome end. On April 29, 2021, the Columbia Correctional Institution declared Michael Hernandez dead. Their report would spark renewed interest in the convicted killer's case, bringing to light the frightening story of a middle school stabbing. Despite wild speculations, an autopsy on Michael's body in August would reveal that he died of cardiac dysrhythmia. But way before the autopsy, and even before his incarceration, the world knew Michael Hernandez had a bad heart and perhaps a bad mind, one that unfortunately claimed the life of a former classmate in one of the most brutal murders ever committed by a teenager. In 2004, Michael Hernandez, 14 at the time, attended Southwood Middle School in the Palmetto Bay area of Florida. He grew up as the youngest in a family of two, and his mother often described him as intelligent and talkative. Michael was also a curious child. He would often ask questions and stay up late reading about whatever caught his fancy. Although we don't have many details of his childhood, it was a pretty happy one, as many photos showed him smiling. Michael's former teachers even described him as someone with a great sense of humor, getting a laugh or two from his classmates and teachers during class. His ability to make people laugh was endearing to many of his schoolmates, and it also helped that he had a lot of charisma. Michael Hernandez was the type of kid that could mix with any crowd and was always welcomed. However, that doesn't mean he was perfect. Like every ordinary teenager, Michael occasionally got into trouble for talking in class or loitering in the halls. But by all accounts, he was a bright and funny child with great potential. Unfortunately, many serial killers like Ted Bundy shared similar traits. Despite his suave nature, Michael still kept close ties with two boys in his class, Jamie Goff and Andre Martin. The trio had formed a close friendship years ago that was still strong, and they got along quite well. In another world, they may have gone on to high school together, gone to prom, and exchanged stories about girls, college applications, and their future. Sadly, only one of them would go on to have a career, while his childhood friends would either be a convicted murderer or dead. Although February 3, 2004 would come to be the most eventful day in the three boys' lives, it started like any other. That morning, Michael got a ride to school with his neighbors, as he usually did. Classmates would later report that they had seen him and Jamie laughing in the halls before class, and nothing seemed unusual. They were waiting for Andre to join them like he always did. Around 8:30 a.m., both boys figured Andre wasn't going to join them that morning and headed into the handicap stall in the bathroom, where Michael had a surprise in store. No doubt, Michael and Jamie scoffed at Andre for missing out as they headed into the restroom. You see, the previous day, on February 2nd, Michael tried to coax his friends into following him into the stall. While ever curious, Jamie was excited, yet Andre was hesitant. Later, Andre would tell investigators that he had a gut feeling something was off. Perhaps it was the fact Michael had a winter jacket on during a hot day, or something was amiss in his countenance. Despite having an eager volunteer, Michael insisted that he wanted to show Andre first. Unable to cajole his friend into entering the stall before the bell rang, Michael gave up and they all headed to class. The next day, still eager to show his friend what was in the stall, Michael decided one person was better than none. Alone in the handicap stall, Michael asked Jamie to turn around and wait for him to pull out the surprise. Eager to see what his friend had up his sleeve, and trusting that someone he had played with since they were children, Jamie hurriedly obeyed. But instead of a weird bug or an interesting magazine, Michael pulled out a knife from a hidden compartment in his backpack. He quickly clamped his hand over Jamie's mouth and began stabbing him. Realizing he had been tricked, Jamie tried to fight, but Michael had the advantage of surprise and strength. Michael Hernandez ignored his friend's pleas for help as he brought the knife down repeatedly. Coroners would later report that Jamie's body had over 40 stab wounds and a slit throat, for good measure. Horrified, or perhaps proud, at his first kill, Michael left Jamie Goff's body on the toilet. He then crudely attempted to conceal his crimes by washing off the blood and stashing the blood-stained knife in his backpack. But before he could escape the crime scene and feign ignorance, another student walked into the restroom and spotted Michael washing his hands. A few meters away laid Jamie's body, bloodied and lifeless. Unable to put two and two together, or perhaps in shock, the student asked, "Do you see the body?" To which Michael replied, "Yes, we should tell somebody." Now a murderer, 14-year-old Michael, rushed off with another student to raise the alarm. One of the first people on the scene was the school's counselor, who immediately alerted a security guard and the police. Once emergency respondents were on the scene, they attempted to revive Jamie Goff with CPR, but quickly realized he had been violently murdered. His jugular veins and windpipe were slashed open, in addition to the multiple stab wounds on his body. It was a horrific sight, and the school was immediately shut down to contain the situation and the violent killer. Meanwhile, Michael had carried on with his day as usual. After alerting the school counselor, he went to his next class, arriving at the scene with blood on his shirt and face. Unaware of the entire situation in school, the teacher immediately began to question Michael, but his attempts to explain the source of the blood were flimsy at best. At this point, rumors started flying around school that someone had been robbed and the police had found a gun. Unfortunately, the truth was a lot darker. After reporting Michael's suspicious behavior to the authorities, detectives took Michael Hernandez into custody and called his parents. Unwilling to come clean, Michael denied all allegations, but a quick search of his backpack revealed the murder weapon with Jamie's blood still on it. With the evidence stacked against him, the police held Michael in juvenile detention overnight. Under pressure and feeling the walls closing in on him, Michael finally told the truth, confessing to the murder of Jamie Goff. Michael admitted to the police that he had planned the murder of his friend for over a week. In a throwaway comment, he had even admitted to Andre Martin that he was obsessed with serial killers and studied them. Curious about what it felt like to be one, Michael hatched a plan where his two closest friends would be his first victims. In his mind, it was too risky to leave them alive, as they both knew he wanted to be a serial killer when he was older. Fortunately for Andre, his gut was right, and he'd escaped what must have been a terrifying end for Jamie. Besides the knife, the police had found other bloodied items in Michael's bag, including a jacket he'd attempted to use to prevent blood from staining his clothes and gloves to avoid blood on his hands. Despite his premeditated measures, Michael was unable to physically and figuratively keep Jamie's blood off his hands. With his computer and journal in custody, police could now comb through Michael Hernandez's mind. His search history revealed multiple searches for dismembered corpses, severed heads, and other gory images. Michael's journal would show even scarier results, with fantasies about serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer and multiple mass shootings. He wrote about killing Jamie, Andre, and even his older sister in his journal. Michael's journal laid out his plan to lure his friends to the bathroom and kill them. He also listed the materials he needed, which the prosecution used as evidence in court to prove that his actions were calculated. Following the police's investigation, Michael Hernandez was charged with the first-degree murder of Jamie Goff and the attempted murder of Andre Martin. Devastated that their son was a murderer and an aspiring serial killer, Michael's parents argued that he was mentally ill. In court, Michael's mother would admit that she saw early signs of a possible mental illness, but ignored them as behavior typical of a teenage boy. After all, It isn't unusual for teens to grow distant and demand more boundaries. Still, Michael displayed odd traits like a rigorously strict routine from sunup till bedtime and repetitive behavior characteristic of OCD. Despite her attempts to help her son get a plea bargain, the judge ruled that while Michael may have had a mental illness, the premeditation in his attack meant he was sane enough to understand what he was doing and to stand trial. After spending 4 years in juvenile detention, the court sentenced Michael Hernandez to life in prison in 2008. However, in 2016, a Supreme Court ruling gave Michael a chance at a reduced sentence when they ruled that juveniles could not receive a life sentence. Since Michael was only 14 at the time he murdered Jamie Goff, the District Court of Appeal had the choice to either uphold their initial life sentence or reserve their decision for a more lenient outcome. 12 years after brutally murdering one of his best friends, Michael took the stand to plead for a life outside a prison bar. With tears in his eyes, he apologized to the Jamie Goff family for taking their son away and admitted feeling horrible for what he did. Despite Michael's attempts to regain his freedom, he could not convince the court he had truly changed. Transcripts between him and a pen pal in prison were used as damning evidence to prove his lack of remorse. In his letters, Michael expressed confusion at serial killers who committed suicide in jail before they became famous for the glory and fun. These messages and similar phone calls weighed heavily in his resentencing case when the court decided to stick with their initial judgment of life imprisonment. The rest of Michael's life would come 4 years later when he passed away from a cardiac dysrhythmia at Columbia Correctional Institution. Michael Hernandez was a bright and funny teen with a promising future who threw it all away because he was obsessed with serial killers. While we can take solace in that this dramatic event spurred Andre Martin to become a police officer so that he can protect others, there's no way to bring back Jamie Goff. Despite his death, Michael's horrific actions continue to haunt his and Jamie's families, as well as everyone present at Southwood Middle School on that fateful day. So there you have it. Do you think Michael Hernandez was indeed mentally ill? Should he have been given a more lenient sentence? Let us know in the comments below. If you appreciated this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more true crime coverage. Thanks for watching, and see you soon in the next video.